So hi everyone, welcome to our Microsoft 365 Pulse Roadmap recording. You have Tamara, Adam, and myself. Jen's off in Orlando playing at the Power Platform Conference and learning all sorts of cool stuff that's coming up there. So as normal, we will go ahead and start with in development, which means Microsoft is currently working with it back in Redmond or wherever it's being developed at. Then they have dates where they expect it to be released, but of course that can always, slide or move forward, whatever ends up happening. Then we'll move into rolling out, which means it started to make its way out into the wild based on the different tenants you have, whether you're targeted, whether you're standard, GCC, GCC high, DoD, worldwide, whatever. And then at the last piece, we will go into launched. And launched means it should be, if you've got the appropriate tenant, in your tenant now, it's been fully rolled out. We do have some canceled stuff at the end that we'll cover. But to get started with, Tamara, why don't you go ahead and talk about in development items that make you happy this week?
Sure. One of them is Microsoft Teams unread toggle on activity feed. So the unread toggle will help the user review only unread items on the activity feed easily and efficiently. So if you read it, but you don't have time to act on it, you can mark it as unread and then use the filter to view all of your unread activity, which to me is a great way to keep up to date with what's going on
Very
within your
much so.
team's environment.
Very much so. Then one right above that is Word. You're now going to be able to create tasks with app mentions. So this is using app mentions and comments to create, assign, and track tasks within your document. And that's going out to the full contingent of platforms worldwide, GCC, GCC High, and DoD. I know that I read something on Twitter where one of the members of the community commented, man, I hope those tasks are going to go to do. I don't know that that's going to be the case, but at least now you can do some tracking within your Word document in terms of things that are going on and things that you might want to assign out to various people. One more that I'll mention too, which I think is really cool, and that is whiteboard loop components. So if you played around with loops, which are the little almost like widgets that you can paste in that are actually files that you can collaborate on. You can have them in multi different areas. Well, the only area that you could have them to date was Teams. They're now actually enabling you to put a loop component in your whiteboard. So what's nice about that is you could have one in your whiteboard that people can all contribute to, but if you had the same loop also in a Teams chat somewhere, any changes that you made in whiteboard in that loop component would also show up in that Teams chat in the same loop component. So it's really nice to have that mixture of collaboration across whatever platforms. I'll be really happy, and maybe they've already got it and I just missed it. Once loops can actually be put in emails, I think it'll really be great that you can put things in chat, put things in email, and everybody is basically filling in the same components. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I'll give
Um,
a shout out to the app mentions in Word that you talked about too.
okay.
We already kind of use that. Like, I'm one of the managing architects at Planet, and that means that whenever we have to respond to this giant 90-page RFP, oftentimes they're bringing several of basically our technical leaders together based off of what it's asking about. So the team that I lead is basically our ongoing support arm. So it's fairly often that we'll have project teams that are going into doing technical implementation, and then we're transitioning to my team as part of the proposal of the RFP process. But so because of that, we may have, like I said, like an 80-page RFP that has 5 different people that have sections inside of the RFP to respond to it. So we already do app mentions in the comment, and it's a good way to realize where someone's saying you need to go through and do something. We actually even hired someone in the last year at Planet to manage our RFP response process for us. So he'll go in and be like, okay, this section makes sense for this person to respond. Having that track to task where it's not just mentions now, we can go in and actually see the task associated with you, I think is going to be a really good thing. So I'll just echo what you said there, Tom. And Tamara, I think you had something to say as well.
Oh, I was just going to go on to Microsoft Teams, the Teams calendar, the
Go for it.
multi-window experience for scheduling, for the scheduling form for government. So currently, it's not possible to work on a file, chat, or look into an activity while managing time on the Teams calendar. And the reason for this is that all of those are different apps located in the left app tray. That's what that's called. That's called the app tray. I'm like, navigation, menu, app
Left
tray.
sidebar.
Left sidebar, the purple place.
The purple
Users
place.
have to switch back and forth between these apps to multitask in the calendar. And there are times that the data and context gets lost while switching between the apps. So if we've heard this feedback, and this is a first step towards fixing that. So that's due out in October, and that's for GCC High and DoD.
Yeah, so there's a couple nerdy things in here that I actually like. I'll kind of keep the trend starting. There's a couple things specifically for the government clouds that I saw that I was fairly excited about. Obviously, you guys probably know at this point that Tamara, myself, and Jen work a ton in the government space. So it's always nice to see some of our customers who are oftentimes slow to get new features getting some love. So a couple things that I thought were really cool. One, the idea of doing Microsoft Graph connectors in GCC. So they even say, which is a little abnormal for them, in the description of the thing that GCC High and DoD are coming soon as well. But just for the update for the GCC one, it's set for September of this year. And the idea behind it is Microsoft Graph's the API you use to do everything. So if you're doing like custom development and stuff, you go in and build it on top of the Graph API. Well, you'll be able to pull in connectors in the same way you can think of connectors in Power Automate or like, Power BI, any of the systems that you can connect into other systems, Sentinel, stuff like that. So you'll basically be able to go in and pull in third-party tools and third-party things like that to actually integrate with what you're going through and doing with the graph. So think about companies out there that have developers that can put together custom apps, or maybe they have some of their own stuff. They can start to bring in services and mold them together in a custom experience for their users. So imagine being able to leverage some of the cool things you can do in Office 365 next to Salesforce and next to some of the other stuff like that. That's what this is potentially going to be giving government customers. So cool to see it listed. Cool something going out there. I'll also say too, another thing for the government clouds that I thought was awesome. And one of the Microsoft Purview updates, basically, if you go through and label and add protection to a document through like MIP labels, so say I go into a Word document and I say, hey, this is, internal classified document, but then someone goes in and prints to PDF and basically converts it to an Adobe file. Up until now, if you did that, you lost the functionality of the labels that you're going through and doing, because at that point, it's going out of the ecosystem that is the Microsoft Office suite. But they're basically announced in an update that coming soon, and again, this is for the government clouds. I'm guessing there's a chance this is already out there for commercial. But basically, if you apply labels and protection to a document and then it's converted into a PDF, those labels will actually be maintained and still be applicable on the PDF, which is also pretty cool too. Again, from thinking of my customers that are DoD contractors that have stuff that's labeled like CUI information, well, if they're going through and they need to convert something to a PDF, that label will maintain, which is actually pretty important when you're going through and looking at the government clouds. A lot of them try to maintain their compliance by making sure their users are properly using labels and applying them to documents. So that was pretty cool. And then I have one final one I'll mention, and then we'll see if Tom and Tamara have anything else. This is actually not necessarily like a super nerdy one, but something that I think a lot of people will be excited about. They're basically coming out with a new Viva tool called a new app called Microsoft Viva Sales. And the idea behind it, if you've gone in and used Viva, it's kind of like a custom thing that uses AI to make your experience a little bit targeted and better. Well, Microsoft Viva Sales is a new seller experience that brings together what you're doing in CRM. I imagine ideally Dynamics, but it just says what you're doing in CRM with your world of 365 to provide a streamlined and AI-powered selling experience right from within the tools I use every day. So again, I see this as being pretty powerful. I'll be the first one to admit why I think Viva has been cool. I've been hesitant to super push it to any of my customers because it's an extra paid app that you're going through and doing that I wasn't sure the functionality that was in there was transformative enough to justify the cost of what they're going through and doing. But as they continue to develop the product, as they continue to come out new things, I could 100% see salespeople being really interested in going through and combining the information they have with their CRM dynamically with the type of stuff that's being created inside of 365 to give them targeted AI-driven experiences to probably give them an edge in the sales process and what they're going through and doing. This is the type of development I think Microsoft needs to do to really make Viva a core part of the offering kind of for the future, if that makes sense.
Agreed. I'll touch on a couple more because they're both Microsoft Stream related. One is that video and audio embed codes for use on internal websites. So if you have a video stored in SharePoint online, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, or Yammer, you're going to be able to get an embed code. And then there are embed web parts that you can use where you can just put that embed the embed code in there, and it will go ahead and show your video in that area. I think that's really cool because it gives you a lot more flexibility on where you might want to put videos at. And then for videos that are stored in OneDrive and SharePoint, they're also adding in the feature that will allow you to do variable playback speed. So it'll support speeds at 0.5 clear up to 2 times the normal video play. So if you're like a lot of geeks, you're like, this person's talking this slow, you're like, not in my thing. It's 1.5. Here we go. We're going to be a lot quicker on this one.
Everybody sounds like the Chipmunks.
Exactly. Now I've got the Christmas chipmunk song.
Sorry about that.
It's going to be stuck there all day.
Mhm.
This is really good for bringing the stream in SharePoint and OneDrive player experience up to what was currently in Stream Classic, but will eventually be going away because Stream Classic will be going away. So very happy to see that. Tamara, anything else before we move into rolling out?
I think you've got it covered.
Okay, rolling out. We've got a whopping 3, count them, 3 items
Can you guess
out
which one
there.
I'm going to talk about, Tom?
Oh, I'm pretty much thinking it's going to be the third one there on the list, and you could probably take the second one, and neither of us would fight you for it either.
And I'll go first.
Okay.
So Microsoft Teams, the live translated captions in meetings. So users will now be able to choose the live captions in the language they prefer with the help of Microsoft Cognitive Service speech translation capabilities. Say that 3 times fast. This will help users fully participate in meetings where the spoken language may not be their most comfortable language to use. I think that's going to be really helpful, especially for worldwide clients. So, and that is supposed to be rolling out this month.
Nice.
Do you want to talk about the second one, Tom?
No, go ahead. I'm perfectly happy to let you run with both of them there, my friend.
Sure. So I'll mention the second one briefly. I'm definitely more of a nerd for the third one, but the second one is another Viva update. They say app type support in the store for Viva connections. So this is basically improved filters and badges in the SharePoint store to support Viva connection aces. Users can easily identify and find adaptive cards that work for the Viva connections dashboard. So this is basically making it easier for people to go out and find what they need in Viva and consume it, for them to be able to go through and get data. It's basically Microsoft just continuing to develop based off of the feedback they're getting from the various places around what's going on and what they need to do with it. Then the third one that I think is actually really cool is basically exact data match to support 10 searchable fields. I think I talked about this when it was listed in development. This is something that's slated to start coming out this year, but coming out for all the different clouds, which is pretty cool. I'm not going to rehash everything related to this again when you go through and look at it, but basically if you're doing EDM right now, you're able to identify up to 5 custom fields that kind of are the core of what you're trying to protect in EDM. They're just expanding that out to 5, or out to 10 rather, which is nice to see.
Cool. Well, that covers all the rolling out. Now we will go ahead and move into launched. A lot of the items, actually probably most of the items in launch, are things that we have probably talked about in the past, but this is just letting you know that, yeah, you should now definitely see those. So for instance, SharePoint, new site templates for team sites. So there's going to be 3 new SharePoint team site templates, so you can create these sites more quickly. And they're going to be an IT help desk template, a crisis communication team, and new employee onboarding team. So again, those are ones where it's really nice. You can pick that template. It comes out. It's got all the pages and the layout that you would probably want in something like that, and then you can just modify it from there. And that's gone out to GCC, GCC High, DoD, and worldwide. Also, I'm not going to touch the Microsoft Teams pre-assigned because Tamara would want to do that one, I'm sure. I will talk, though, at the very end, Microsoft Teams background blur and effects for Citrix and VMware. So now if you're not sitting in front of a real computer and you're using a virtual computer, you're now going to be able to have a few more of the options that you would have in Teams, in terms of being able to blur your background or, replace it with an image. So if you're using that type of virtual computer environment, look for those features to be out there. Those should have been going out to the entire spectrum also, and those went out in September. So have at it. Tamara.
Great. Well, we've got the view the attendance report in Microsoft Teams. That's coming out for Android and iOS, and that's worldwide. That is not for the government. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo. And then this, I believe, is already rolled out, and this is pre-assigned channel members to breakout rooms, and that's for GCC and World Wide Web. So what it is the ability for the organizer to pre-assign participants to a breakout room within channel meetings for the channel members. So before it was you had to invite the individuals in order to pre-assign them, but now even if it's a channel meeting, you can reassign or pre-assign, beg your pardon, those members who are members of the team to a breakout room before the meeting even starts. I mean, you go into the meeting, you set up the breakout rooms, then you leave the meeting and it's all set up when you come back into the meeting. So that's about all that I have, because you already covered the new site templates.
Right. So you want
Very
to
excited about those.
go into your techie rabbit hole there, Adam?
There's some updates that are going launched for the Purview Compliance Center, specifically related to premium e-discovery, which is what used to be advanced e-discovery. There's several that are specific to the government clouds, although there's a couple that do everything. I'll just list out a couple of them that I think are cool. There's 5 or 6 of them in here, so if you guys are really curious, I'd encourage you to go out and look at the roadmap to get an idea of what's changing. But for instance, for the government side, they're expanding the case limit size, where currently you can go to a max of 300 gigs, and they're basically going to be expanding it from 300 gigs to 1 terabyte is the size
Holy
you can go
cow.
to hold information for cases. And exports are actually going to be increased to 5 million documents or 500 gigabytes, whichever is smaller, to go through and actually export the data out from a cases, which is really cool. If you're in a very large organization, imagine like you're the Department of Justice or something like that,
right,
and you need to go through and do it. I'm sure this can be good. I've actually done some e-discovery conversations with federal departments where I was on the phone with like 50 people, and fairly often they actually use the e-discovery center for Freedom of Information Act request, which makes sense. But so I imagine being able to search and store and do a lot of stuff is actually going to be pretty important to them. So I'm sure they'll be excited to see that. Another one that I thought was really cool that's targeted towards the government clouds as well too, but you'll also see this coming out to regular clouds, is you can create communication templates. One of the newer or cooler features about eDiscovery Premium is you have the ability to basically notify people that, hey, we're going through and doing a search. Again, where I've seen a great example of this, think if you're in a federal agency and someone does a Freedom of Information Act request, part of what you do is notify the people, hey, there's been a Freedom of Information Act request related to this road project we're doing over in X, Y, and Z. As such, we're going to go through and pull documents related to it. But oftentimes you actually want to notify your employees so they know that, they should be not deleting anything or anything like that.
Right.
And Microsoft therefore put in a communication template as part of the originally advanced discovery process. Well, now you can basically go in and save pre-formed communication that you're doing and basically pull it up in future cases. So before, you would basically have to go in and type it up what you wanted every time. I guess you could have like saved it on your own in Word, but you basically can save, okay, I do these often, or hey, here's what I do when I'm doing a Freedom of Information Act request. Just pull that up and use a templated communication, which is kind of nice to see.
Great. I'm wondering if Adam wants to go through the canceled, since it's all like Adam-y stuff.
Okay.
Well, so interestingly enough, when you go through and you look at the canceled items, there's a lot that got moved canceled this week. The vast majority of what was canceled is actually stuff that falls under two large sections whenever I go through and look at it. Most of it is falling under insider risk management and some of the stuff that you're going through and doing. So we've actually talked about a decent amount of these on our show. If you recall, insider risk management is the systems that Microsoft has put in place that are designed to give you insights if something negative is going on between your employees that you may not be aware of. And so this is always an interesting topic to talk about because I feel like it gets a little big brother-ish, where you don't want to feel like, oh, Microsoft is letting my company spy on me and stuff that should be private or something it shouldn't have. But really the idea behind most of it is to do stuff like, oh, hey, this manager is sexually harassing an employee that's in a position, where she's, subservient to them, or she's, reports to them, or this person's bullying or stuff like that. It's really, most of the time when you look at what the actual technology is designed to do, I think it's really done in a good way to try to protect people that are maybe, especially in the modern world where so many more people are working remote. And it's one thing if you go to an office and you be like, hey, that guy's acting really weird, or that girl, that poor new employee is acting strange around their manager, I wonder why. You don't get to see a lot of those actions nowadays and a lot of those interactions now that we're doing remote. So, but Microsoft has canceled a buttload of them. Everything from going to look at enhancements to recommended actions, stuff about the secret detector, going through and looking about classifier support, anomaly as a policy, some of the stuff related to the wizards and quick policies that you're going through and doing. I don't see a lot of updates related to some of the core technologies that we've talked about over times, but a lot of it seems like the supporting enhancements to insider risk got canceled. Now, the interesting thing here is you normally don't see this many things canceled unless Microsoft is basically planning on approaching the problem from a different way. If it's made it this far onto the roadmap before, Microsoft has clearly identified that this is an area that they feel like they can address and improve, or they wouldn't have gone to the trouble of actually creating descriptive items about it and going through. Normally, when you see whole-scale cancellations like this, Microsoft is probably deciding to approach the problem from a different angle. I wouldn't be shocked, for instance, if there's stuff that comes out in Viva that can help to address some of the stuff of what's going on and some of the things like that. Or if there's like a new, section that's going to come out in the Purview Compliance Center that's related to not necessarily insider risk management, but basically like, legal troubles or something like that. Like, who knows? But my expectation would be we will see this continue to be developed somewhere else, just because we saw like 10 things canceled all at once from the same general product set.
Well, and I think it's also interesting that a number of them, the tagline at the top is, this feature is currently available in public preview.
Yeah.
But GA is postponed indefinitely and will be announced via roadmap once timing is determined. So what it sounds like is, hey, we went ahead, we put it out in public preview, people worked with it the whole bit, we got feedback, and we need to make some more changes before we roll it out to general availability. So interesting angle there. Well, that pretty much covers everything that we have. Thank you, everyone, for joining in and listening to this whenever or wherever you might happen to be, or whenever you might happen to listen to it. We will be back next week to cover the latest and greatest in the roadmap. Be interesting to see if we have some items that come out on the roadmap related to Power Platform, being that this is their Power Platform conference down in Orlando this week. So we'll keep our eyes open for that, let you know what's coming up new. And with that, everyone, have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we will see you again next week.
Bye now.
Bye, everyone.